I woke up early morning before my alarm with my mind racing about this previous episode 209, where we talked about the battle between personal liberties and social order. And I realized I missed one important point. Hey, it's Lucas Skrobot, and you're listening to the Lucas Skrobot Show, where we uncover purpose, pursue truth, and own the future. This is a little bonus episode, a little goodie for you on the heels of episode 209, where we look through the outbreak of protest throughout Europe and America's partying on the beaches. But really, in that episode, we were breaking down the differences of worldview between people's personal liberties and social order. And when did our personal decisions begin to infringe upon other people's safety or other people's rights as well? And then when does the good of the whole, the social order, begin to infringe upon our personal liberties? And how do we walk that out? It's in my opinion, a very fine line that pulls on each side. We can't go too far to one way or the other, or we will have chaos. We will have anarchy. We will have tyranny. We'll have totalitarian governments and states. And it just ends up bad. But the point that I missed is when we spoke about the quote in the Weaver and Loom section, I missed an underlying fundamental principle that causes us, that where our stance comes from, of how we see government and personal liberties come into play. So without further ado, here is this last Weaver and Loom segment again. It is the the alternate ending, if you will, to the previous episode. Welcome back to Weaver and Loom, a part of the show where we take ancient wisdom and we weave it in with our everyday lives so that we can weave our destinies and own our futures. This week's quote was by Thomas Aquinas, who is an ancient, not so ancient Catholic philosopher who really took a lot of his thoughts and ideas from Aristotle and he fleshed them out into political theories on justice, theories on virtue, on how we walk out our personal life in an upright way. Thomas Aquinas wrote, "Fear is such a powerful emotion for humans that when we allow it to take us over, it drives compassion right out of our hearts." And the point that I missed for this alternate ending with Aquinas's quote here is the point is it drives compassion out of our hearts. So we know there is no fear in love. So that when we're living in love, we're not operating out of fear. But when we give ourselves over to fear and anxiety, Aquinas is right that it drives compassion out of our hearts, and we begin to see the world through a very different lens. We begin to see the world from a lens of self-preservation and scarcity, rather than from a place of abundance and thinking of others and serving others. But where does this fear come from? Where does that fear spring up from? And fear springs up from the things that we put our trust in. And that is the point that I missed, that these underlying worldviews, these competing worldviews between personal liberties or social order or governmental control, it all springs from the question of where are you placing your trust? If you are placing your trust in a governmental system and you think, okay, the government is there to take care of me. The government is there to keep me safe. It's the government's responsibility. I'm placing my trust in the government. Well, then when things go wrong, you're going to naturally want to see more government intervention because you're believing that it's the government's role. Your trust is in the government to take care of you, to create order within society. And when that trust begins to fail, which we have seen it failing, we have seen trust in government fail by and large. And when that begins to fail, we begin to move from a place of safety into a place of feeling fear, and we start to grab and we start to take more and more totalitarian control. The Aspen Institute has released a study showing the reasons for loss of trust in government institutions. One of them is poor institutional performance. As bureaucracy grows and there's more and more red tape, the performance of a government is going to decrease and it's going to become calcified and cumbersome. Large-scale global shocks, which we're seeing right now with the crisis, the global crisis. The world is in shock and we're wondering, is the government able to actually solve this problem? Political polarization across the board. We are just seeing so much bickering back and forth, a lack of cooperation between the sides of the aisles, I think on a global stage, especially in the West, especially in America. Increasing economic inequity. In 2020, we saw the greatest transfer of wealth from the middle class to the upper class, largely due to these lockdowns. There's a lot of mistrust. There's a lot of people following the money and saying, wait a minute, it seems like there's an agenda that it is benefiting the few who are in power rather than the middle class, and decreasing economic mobility. And that's what it goes back to the previous point with the largest transfer of wealth in history in a single year in 2020 from the middle class to the upper class. So there's a good reason that people are losing trust in government. But if your faith is in government, then your natural reaction is going to be, we need more governmental control. We need more oversight. We need more legislation. We need more bureaucracy. We need more programs to support society. We need more control so that people have to do certain things. We can't let people have their own free will because our trust is in a governmental system. If our trust is in the individual and the personal individual, and me saying, I trust myself to make my own decisions and I trust you to make your own wise decisions, then that trust, because of where that trust is placed, we are going to have a different response because we are trusting in ourselves, our personhood. We're not looking to a government institution to take care of our needs, but we're looking to ourselves to take care of our needs. But now, in both circumstances, over the past year and a half, we have seen people freak out because we are no longer in control of the situation. I am not in control. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to grab control out of my fear, and I lose all sense of compassion because I am looking for self-preservation because my trust, which might be placed in myself, is failing because I'm not able to, I'm not capable because the control has been taken from me. And even if I was given back that control, there's no guarantee that I would be able to reach that place of safety again because of greater micro and macroeconomic situations that might be happening around me. If our trust is in the economy, if our trust is in the dollar or the Bitcoin or the gold standard, if we're placing our trust in an economic system, then when that system begins to fail, what happens? Fear rises up in our hearts. And we begin grabbing. And we begin to see the world through a myopic lens where we're focusing on ourselves first rather than seeing from a place of faith, seeing from a place of abundance. So my question to you as you lead your personal life, or you're leading your family, or you're leading your team, or you're a leader in the peers around you, is where are you placing your trust? And in what can you confidently place your trust. I know where I need to place my trust. And I know when I place my trust in the correct place, that anxiety, that fear dissipates. And so for me, whether my personal liberties are infringed upon, or whether there's not enough social order or too much social order, or not enough personal liberties or too much personal liberties, I can sleep at night because my trust are not in those externalities, those systems that are controlled by men who are infallible or fallible and flawed. In every system, it's fallible and flawed. So ask yourself and look at how you're approaching this situation and go down a deeper level or go up to a higher level of abstraction to the root of the way that we see these functionings between personal liberties and social order. And when we can move one higher level to an abstraction of where we're putting our trust, for me at least, it makes things look a little clearer of how the lines blur or don't blur and how the puzzle pieces fit together. Because social order is put in place and it is good. It is a good thing that helps society run. And without a level of social order, we would have chaos and anarchy, but also your personal liberties are important to have society run, because without it, we'd have a complete totalitarian state where no one would want to do anything for either fear of losing their lives or no motivation or compensation because they're not even living in a free market. So that's all for this bonus episode. I hope it gave you some extra nuggets to think about as we looked at this quote by Aquinas. Again, fear is such a powerful emotion, Aquinas says, for humans that when we allow it to take over, it drives compassion right out of our hearts. Do not let fear take hold of your hearts this week. Do not let fear take hold of your hearts, because it will drive compassion out. It will drive our humanity out. It will drive our ability to see across the aisle. It will drive our ability, it will kill our ability to see across the aisle. It will kill our ability to link arms with people who don't agree with us, who don't see the world like we see, and we need that in this hour. We need cooperation from all sides so that we can move forward and create a society with the right tensions, with the right bounds, and whether that's society within our family, within our local community, or within a global scale. We need to work together. That is all for this episode. I want to thank you for joining in for this little bonus episode from episode 209 of the show. If you have a question, you can WhatsApp me at +1 202 922 0220. And remember to share this with a friend. Text them, message them, and say a little personal hello. I listened to this and I was thinking of you. And finally, remember to go out this week, discern the truth, and own the future.